Hello everyone and welcome back to another Star Wars The Black Series action figure review. Today we're taking a look at the Imperial Praetorian Guard from The Mandalorian Season 3, and like the Armoured Commando I gave you a look at in a recent review, this is another one of those characters that appeared on screen, and as soon as it did I knew I needed it in action figure form, and Hasbro's efforts really don't disappoint with this one. It's a great addition to the collection. I love the design of this character. I was a huge fan of the Elite Praetorian Guards that we saw in The Last Jedi, but unfortunately, due to the exclusivity of some of those figures, I was only ever able to add one to my collection. So for this to be a mainline release, a superb army builder packed with some great accessories, I'm all for it, and I'm really impressed with how this one turned out. So we are of course going to dive into this review in more detail in just a little bit. Before we do, if you'd like to purchase this figure for yourself, there is a link down below in the video description. That will take you to Star Action Figures, and at the time of filming this review, the Imperial Praetorian Guard is in stock and available to buy, and I would definitely recommend picking up at least two of these figures because they are really good. So without further ado, let's dive into it, and we'll kick things off as always by taking a look at the packaging that this figure comes in. So with regards to packaging, as you can see, this figure does come in the standard Black Series style box. We have the copper colour band around the edge of the box indicating that this figure is from The Mandalorian. We have the number in the Mandalorian subline and the name of the character just up the side of the window there. This is number 43. And then down the spine we have some very cool mural artwork of the Praetorian Guard in action. On the reverse side we have that image once again accompanied by a brief description of the character, but again packaging wise pretty standard stuff. So let's jump into this review and take a look at what makes this such a great addition to the Black Series line. So to kick off this review, I did want to spend a little bit of time comparing the Imperial Praetorian Guard to his First Order counterpart. Obviously this figure was released a number of years ago now in conjunction with the release of The Last Jedi, and it was at the time such a weird and bizarre design, really unlike anything we'd ever seen in Star Wars at that point. But what I really love about the Imperial Praetorian Guard is that the fusion of different design elements with this one really helped this one serve as such a cool precursor to the First Order Elite Praetorian. Obviously the Imperial one has a lot of elements of Mandalorian going on in his armour. You've got First Order aspects as well, Imperial design features. It's just such a well put together and really thought out costume design, and that translates really well into action figure form, and I'm really happy to have this one in the collection once again. As I said, the majority of the Elite Praetorian Guards from The Last Jedi were all released as exclusives, so this was the only one I was able to add to my collection. But like I said, to have the Imperial Praetorian as a mainline release and to come with a couple of weapons that allow you to army build the figure and display it in different ways, it's a really welcome addition to the line, and I'm again really happy to have this one in the collection. So just a quick bit of a side-by-side for you. Let's dive into this one now and take a look at the Imperial Praetorian Guard's features. So just taking an overall look at the figure to start things off, like I said, I'm really impressed with not only the costume design of the character, but the way that Hasbro have translated this one into action figure form. The crimson red armour is the first thing you'll notice about this figure. Really striking, really vibrant, definitely brings that all-important shelf presence to your display. The gloss finish on the armour itself looks really nice, and is in keeping with other guards and troopers that we've seen in this sort of style. Really cool looking figure overall, has great use of soft goods. As you can see, you've got this really nice fabric around the waist of the figure that drapes down nicely. It's a really thick, premium and heavy material that gives a really nice drape on the figure, and that is evident around the back as well. As you can see, he's got this little cape going on that is tucked underneath his chest armour. Just really cool looking overall, a great addition to the Imperial ranks, and like I said, I'm definitely considering picking up at least another one of these to flesh out my display. Now, first and foremost, I just want to touch on some of the sculpted detail and articulation on this figure, because there are a couple of elephants in the room that I feel need to be addressed. The first of those being my overall expectation of this figure going into the purchase. I firmly expected this figure, obviously featuring design elements that could have quite easily been carried over from previous figures and been heavily inspired by those elite Praetorian Guards from The Last Jedi, to rely on a lot of reused parts, and it surprised me just how much of this figure appears to be, at least in my opinion from what I can tell, brand new, and that's really refreshing and really nice to see. As you can see, the chest armour is very similar, if not identical, to that of the First Order Stormtroopers, and I honestly thought that this would just be a retooled torso from said figure, but as far as I can tell, it's a brand new sculpt. It's a separately sculpted overlay, which is always good, doesn't hinder any articulation in the figure itself, and is made of a really nice soft malleable plastic, which really allows you to pose this figure in multiple dynamic poses. The same can be said for the shoulder armour as well, which is on the O-ring system, which has been the case with most troopers released recently, and that allows you to move the arm independently of the shoulder plate, and again doesn't hinder articulation. Now, with regards to the articulation itself, it is for the most part up to a modern standard. However, the legs of this figure do appear to be reused, although from what figure I honestly couldn't say, because upon comparison to the Elite Praetorian that I have in my collection, the upper thighs at least appear to be a brand new sculpt. The thighs on the Elite Praetorian are a lot more textured and seem a little bigger. These thighs are a little more slender, a little smoother, and don't have as much texture going on. And the knee pads on this figure appear smaller than on the Elite Praetorian as well. So I'm not entirely sure where these legs come from, if they have been recycled from a previously released figure. But I do sort of have an inkling that maybe they're brand new tooling, because there's no swivel cut at the upper thigh, which has been a recent articulation decision on Hasbro's part. However, as you can see in the knee joint, you do have the pins visible, which does lead me to believe that this is a little bit of reuse. But again, from which figure, I couldn't honestly say. The boots, I think, are from the Elite Praetorian. They do seem very, very similar, and you've got that double knee joint there, which again is, by today's standards, a little bit outdated and isn't so much seen nowadays. But everything else in terms of the overall sculpt does seem very similar to the Elite Praetorian itself. So I just thought that was worth pointing out, that, like I said, the majority of this figure is brand new, but there does appear to be some reuse. But it's not a major issue. I'm an advocate for reuse when it makes sense, and in this instance it certainly does, and it's not a detriment to the overall figure itself, so I'm really happy about that. With regards to articulation, this one is packed to the brim, and like I said, for the most part articulated to a modern standard. We have a double ball joint in the head, so as usual we have a ball joint at the base of the head and the bottom of the neck, which really allows you to pose the head any which way. There's a nice range of movement going on there. No removable helmet on this one, and no sculpted head inside the helmet itself, so that does allow for some nice posability. We do have butterfly joints at the shoulders, and as I said, that shoulder armour is on the O-ring, so it doesn't hinder any of that shoulder articulation, and you can get the arms up some really cool poses. We have hinges at the elbows and at the wrists. There's a nice fluid ball joint at the torso, and once again, with that chest armour being a separate overlay, there's no articulation hindrance there either. We do have ball joints at the hips, and of course the lower robes are soft goods, so perfectly articulated, no hindrance once again. We also have hinges, or a double hinge should I say, at the knee, and a hinge and rocker at the ankle. So great articulation on this one. You will notice on the back of the figure, as I showed you earlier, the cape that's tucked underneath the chest armour also doesn't hinder any articulation, which is great. And again, overall this figure is really nicely sculpted and really nicely painted. Again, that gloss red finish is so striking, so cool looking, and this figure looks absolutely fantastic as part of your Black Series shelf. With regards to accessories, the first weapon that this figure comes with is the very cool looking vibro axe, which is really nicely sculpted and really nicely painted as well, surprisingly. There's quite a lot of different paint applications and different shades of silver and grey going on on the blade itself and on the handle, which looks really cool. The sculpt is really nicely done and looks great in the figure's hand, as you can see. There is a third weapon, I believe, that these Praetorians use in the Mandalorian, though it hasn't been included with this figure, unfortunately. But no doubt later down the line Hasbro will milk this sculpt for all it's worth and release this figure with that third weapon. And as you can see, the second accessory that's included with the figure is what I'm going to call the Electro Whip. I'm not entirely sure on the technical name for this weapon, but it's very similar to the one used by the Elite Praetorians in The Last Jedi. Very cool sculpt, great detail going on there, really nice paint applications. You've got the pointed end on the whip itself, which looks really cool, really menacing, and the figure holds it really nicely, as you can see. The only thing that I think could have improved this weapon would have been an electric effect overlay, very similar to how we've seen with other figures, such as the Magna Guard, for example. I think that would have been a really nice touch, but it's great as it is, looks really cool. And again, I'd definitely recommend picking up at least 2 of these figures so that you can display each one with each different weapon and really flesh out that display on your Mandalorian Black Series shelf. But really happy with the accessories included with these figures, and very happy with the figure overall. So that concludes this review on the Imperial Praetorian Guard from Star Wars The Mandalorian. Once again, a great addition to the Black Series line, a solid army builder with some fantastic accessories, great paint applications. One of the things that I really should touch on before we wrap up this review is just how crisp the paint apps are on the helmet itself. The visor is painted perfectly, and I love the overall design of that helmet. It's very medieval, very imposing, and very cool looking. And subjectively, this is a much cooler figure than the Elite Praetorians from The Last Jedi. Your mileage may vary on that depending on which design you prefer, but I just love, like I said, the fusion of different eras and different designs that have been pumped into not just this character but this action figure as well. There's Mandalorian in there, there's Imperial, there's First Order, and it's just such a cool precursor to the guards that we ultimately see in the sequels, and really translates well into action figure form, and I'm thrilled to have this one on my shelf. So if you want to purchase this one for yourself, again, hit the link down below in the video description, and while you're there, why not check out my YouTube channel memberships, which just went live a couple of weeks ago. I have 3 levels of channel memberships available to you, all offering different perks, and your support at any level would be greatly appreciated. I'll be back with some more reviews very soon, so until next time, as always, keep collecting, and may the Force be with you.